Hello, everyone. I am now going to read to you chapter 5 of my book, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy. And this chapter really changed my perception of love to a certain degree because this is really the first chapter where I write in a highly romantic manner. And so it taught me a lot about writing love poetry in that regard. So here is chapter 5. Chapter 5 Ghosts, Edward's narrative. Formerly cumbrous and inauspicious, the air exhibited a precocious freshness that I had only seldom encountered. Even as the celestial sphere descended below the horizon, the breezy aromas remained confined in an eternal afternoon. A curtain of vespertine azure fell upon the snow-covered meadows, zestfully longing for ivory amers. It almost seemed like the ice was a consort for the opine heavens. I was wandering through a Hyperborean sea, one which emitted crystalline raptures. The luscious verdures of comely April had not yet ascended from the glacial decadence, for they had been blessed with somnolent sleeps. It appeared, at least in that moment, that the snow was afflicted by a somnambulistic odyssey, an ailment that could only be cured by the passions of noontide showers. I had not I had not seen another house for quite some time. The echoes of Harrisville only lightly reverberated in my ears. Occasionally I felt like I was treading on the surface of a blank page, my footsteps only being diminutive blemishes. It was like trailing through a novel without a story, a frame without a portrait, or a stage without an audience. Under the dwindling lucidities of winsome vespers, I was little more than a wizened snowflake, the external layers of which yearned for the fealty of the portentous wind. Far off in the distance, my eyes finally beheld the house that had eluded my dour sensibilities for many a year. The gables were like sets of glass eyes that had only captured melancholy reflections. They were the antecedents of alchemical eclipses, the anointed emissaries for all extinguished resplendencies. To them, daylight was only an apocryphal fairy tale. The seasons passed like capricious fantasies, their lucidities akin to ephemeral raindrops. I remembered when the house was first built. The pristineness of the untarnished paint, along with the velvety drapes that soothed the spotless apertures, ensnared one's acuities. It was like watching the resurrection of the world. All stars were once young, all rivers once pure, and all forests once vibrant. Inevitably, however, time always kills what it loves. The gardens wither away, the waters are ensanguined, and the stars are whispered out of existence. At one time, every window was sanctified with splendescent glows, but like the stars, they were rescinded by amorless breaths. Knocking on the scarlet door, my knuckles lightly trembled. My lungs ascended with timorous celerity, as though intimidated by the silence of the wind. As the door receded into the opaque umbra, I beheld the face that cured the fevers of my soul. Her visage had been refined by the coquetries of summer tempests, upon which rested the radiances of the world. Conceived by the apricities of wintry raptures, her auricomous hair was redolent of golden dawns, and under the ashen light of dusk it almost seemed as if the sunlight had been reincarnated in her effervescent lineaments. "Good evening, Miss Harris. I don't know if you are aware, but your husband asked me to come see him." "Yes, of course. As a matter of fact, I was just tidying up." "You didn't have to go through all that trouble on my account, Miss Harris." "Who else would I take the trouble for?" "This is a lonely house, Mr. Compton. It is like a garden that is never nourished by the elixirs of summer. One, one can only live in darkness for so long. Sooner or later, you must awaken to the light, or else be forever a child," she whispered. "You almost speak as if you were a stranger in your own home," I said with a slight laugh. "Not a stranger, just a ghost," she uttered softly. There was a reticence in her inflections that I had never encountered before, its fragility being almost too supple to comprehend. Her cerulean spheres, for a moment exuberantly festive, adopted a downcast repose, like an eddied tide evanescing on a misbegotten shore. Her suspirations were almost elemental in their rhythms, so poignant were their reverberations. Is something troubling you? I asked. All women are troubled, Mr. Compton. Some are just better at veiling the malady, but not the after effects. I could always come back at a better time. I can't explain why, Miss Harris, but when storm clouds pass over your life, the rains seem to trickle into mine as well, I said, my pitch growing softer. It's quite all right. In fact, I think we are all tears in the rain. Some dance, others whisper, but all are swept away by the cries of the wind. In the end, is that not what we become? Just cries in the wind? Backing further into the grayish streams of tender light, Catherine released a sundry of delicate suspirations. The sensuous candlelights of her youth had gone out, forever usurped by a far more parsimonious illumination. As I crossed the musty threshold, I did not see the vivacious flower that I had once known, but only a sumptuous petal. To me, however, the petal was worth more than all of the blooming flowers in heaven. My lady, I hope such winds are gentle, for you are the very soul of serenity, I espoused, my voice shaking. You are too kind. I know my husband sees value in you. To tell you the truth, he doesn't invite employees to our home very often. He's a very private man. Even as his wife, I still don't know him completely. Of course, now that I ponder about it, we don't really know anyone completely. Our bodies are like marble statues, eruditely forged but impenetrable. We cannot look upon the face of the sun, for it sees the black stains on our souls. At night, when all is still and calm, I can sometimes hear it weeping. So profound is its bereavement. We recoil from the light, embracing oblique sorrows. Perhaps such things are true, but as a painter I still try to see the beauty in life, however difficult it may sometimes be. I didn't know you were an artist, Mr. Compton. I'm not an artist. I simply have an obsession. Real artists are exalted by the masses, something that will only ever be a forlorn dream to me. I simply try to observe and capture the elegance in a world that is so often inelegant. For instance, when I look upon your visage, Miss Harris, I don't see a sorrowful night, but a radiant day, its celestial face warming the frigidity of my heart, I said, my breath intensifying. As my syllabifications penetrated Catherine's felt ears, the lines in her face were filled with tinges of incarnadine. The rubicund hues, remarkably lustrous in their textures, were like tints of auroral light on a lissom river. It was a river that flowed only in the mind, the realm where daylight never perishes. You must not say such things, Mr. Compton, she whispered, her eyes staring at the floor. And why not? It's not proper. I consider myself to be a respectable woman, and as such I have a duty to my husband, one which I cannot forsake. I also have a duty to God, my most beloved Creator. Don't you also have a duty to yourself? As Christians, we are supposed to deny ourselves. Every day, often every hour, I die to my desires, to the dreams that pass like vapors in the night. I am like the ancillary soils in the earth, perennial and everlasting, she said, her gaze turning towards the dimly lit corridor. Within her placid eyes, I saw the death of 1,000 yearnings, upon which all of her dreams wept. The pale glows of the pendulating lanterns gradually dwindled, like dying suns radiating through crepuscular voids. Rather than being stifling and baleful, the miasmic air invigorated my ascending lungs, its auras replete with perfidious inertias. I was in a home that was only half alive, partially sentient, and completely begrimed. I didn't mean to upset you, Miss Harris. If I have, I do apologize. There's no need to apologize. To tell you the truth, I needed to hear those words more than ever. How can a tree regret being nourished by the sun? I would just advise your rays to not linger over the branches too long, for they belong to the night, she said, her voice shaking. But when will it be morning? There are no mornings for the damned, Mr. Compton. Her statement sounded so final, as if her soul had perished in the breaths between her words. The right side of her countenance drifted into the acrimonious spectrums of copperous scintillation, seemingly resigned to the penumbras of bewitched hours. In that moment she was little more than a doleful mist, one which glided through silver imaginings. No longer an abstract levity, the shadow of contrition burnished her rubescent lips, the tips of which fervently trembled. The astral enchantments within her vivacities were diminishing, forever beholden to vespertine blisses. Life was conceived by the stars. Catherine's star was the most splendid of all, but all stars must perish, especially if they were forged by the tears of God. And that is all of chapter 5. Um, Essentially, this is the first time that Catherine and Edward meet in the story. They've met before, and it sets up essentially what is going to happen next. Edward has just come to his boss's home. He's been invited there by Frederick, and he encounters Catherine um, downstairs. And you can tell now that there is a romantic tension between them. So, how is that going to develop? Well, if you stay subscribed, you will find out in the next chapter, chapter 6 of the Ecstasy and the Ignominy.